Thank you for joining me again, everybody. Today, my guest is John Doherty, a good friend of mine. We've been in contact for many years. And John, I'm going to start off with a real meaty one. You sold a marketplace business to start a new agency or to focus on your agency, EditorNinja. Why the hell did you do that?
Because marketplaces are really friggin' hard to grow. It was actually a marketplace that became an agency that kind of stalled out because the business model was kind of broken. I didn't have the energy to keep growing it. And so I sold it and to focus on the agency I had started on the side. And I started EditorNinja on the side basically to see if I would have more fun running a different business. And the universe said yes, and the business started growing. I'm like, all right, time to make the shift. So
right. So let's go back to Credo, because it's a really interesting, there's a lot of things interesting about the story, I'm sure, but it's an interesting idea at a high level. As an agency owner myself, I love the idea of a marketplace where customers can find better agencies that are a better fit. One of the big challenges everybody who works with an agency says is like, how do I know if this agency is any good? How do I find other like similar ones, like et cetera? Tell me about the genesis of that project and how it kind of took off.
Yeah, I mean, we're going back 12 years to when it first started. The very first revenue was it was February 2013. I was working for an agency. I'd been doing some SEO consulting, decided to stop doing that at the end of 2012, and which was perfect because I met my now wife of 11 years, 3 weeks later. So I actually had time to hang out with her. So I'd stopped doing like side consulting work, and I got in some leads. People were still contacting me, wanting me to work with them. I'm like, I'm not working with anyone. They're like, well, who should I work with? So I was like, I built out literally a Google sheet of people. And I remember I got in a lead that was in Provo, Utah. And so my friends Brandon and Cade run Wallaroo Media out of Provo. It was a perfect fit for them. It was like down the street from them. And I'm like, Brandon, would you like this intro? He's like, yes, please. I'm like, cool. Will you pay me $50 for it? And he goes, what's your PayPal? So I made the intro. I had $50 literally 3 minutes later, $50 in my PayPal account, sent him the intro. He went and made thousands of dollars from that. I bought a domain name and launched a website. And so it was a side project for a while. For a few years, I went in-house. And then I got laid off in September 2015. And my wife was like, what are you going to do? I was like, well, I think I'm going to try working for myself for a while. Because I was like interviewing. But it was like, there's this little voice in the back of my head, Karl, going, don't do it. Like, you don't want a job. Don't do it. Like, I'd had the itch to kind of, I've always been kind of entrepreneurial. Long story short, I chose not to do it. I picked up some SEO consulting work pretty quick to kind of pay the bills and started building. It was called hiregun.co at the time. I rebranded it 4 or 5 months later. And and kind of grew it from there. It started off kind of as like results only, like we generate the leads for you. If you close, then you pay us, like sort of thing. So like no risk for the agencies, but it was really to refer people to good agencies and good trusted freelancers because there are so many people out there. I heard exactly that. How do I know who's good? Well, I can build a directory. We can vet them. We know who they are. Like I did a vetting call for probably the first 100 or so agencies and providers that we had on the platform. And we just kind of kept that same like quality bar. Just like everyone had to be approved. I still do that with EditorNinja. We have like a broader talent network that like people have to apply and we review their work. And, we have say like, we need X, Y, and Z. If you don't have any of those, or like your bio has too many typos or whatever, like we're not going to approve you because like, we just don't trust the level of your work and we wouldn't refer people to you. That's kind of where it started.
So marketplaces are tempting. They're like this. I think every entrepreneur has had a marketplace idea because we all see these inefficiencies, right? I remember one of my first attempts at starting a business was like aggregating jobs and then, having a marketplace there for talent and jobs and trying to match that. Like such a common, and lots of people have tried that kind of thing. What's hard about it? You mentioned growth is hard. Like it sounds like, you were getting leads for some of these agencies. So there's financial value there. What was the hard part of the blocker for you to get that to a level where it really took off?
We never really reached the point where it really took off. We could have, but there was a thing called a pandemic in the middle. Basically what happened was we started off with that like results only, went to more of like a flat rate, like subscription kind of service. And kind of messed around with some different like, lower retainer and longer term, like commission on closed work and that sort of stuff. And then in 2019, I had the idea to build out the marketplace, like the escrow marketplace. So it was more of like a managed marketplace. So like it wasn't people could come in and just like browse the marketplace and connect and whatever. Basically, like we had agencies that we would like refer most of the work to, and when they closed, and we had a full like proposal, invoicing, et cetera, process. And so we actually held the payment for the agencies in escrow. And once they delivered, we required reporting, early in the next month, and then we would release the money to the agency and take a commission. So, Karl, we launched that in June, July, August, very early second half of 2019. And by January, February of the next year, we were holding about 250K in escrow like every month. So it grew actually really fast. We went from like cold start to that in about 7 months. So off of an established business. So we had the established workflow and or the established lead flow and all of that. And then the pandemic hit and people started firing their agencies, and I got scared and we lopped the product in half, went back to the subscription model. If I had stayed the course for another 6 months, I mean, that thing would have just freaking blown up, man, because everyone like let go of their marketing teams and then hired agencies and saw that like people were buying a lot more online and whatever. And it would have worked out well, but like I saw a 25% revenue haircut and was like, I couldn't handle it, just with everything else going on in the world. So that's a regret. That's one of the few regrets I have, like in business, like big regrets I have in business. But yeah, so we just kind of moved it back to being an agency model in 2020. And then ran that for about 2.5 years.
What did you learn from that? Like, would you go back to a marketplace at some point? And I know we'll talk about EditorNinja a bit, or in a bit. And it is a little bit of a marketplace, although I would say it's more of a productized service.
It's an agency. It's a productized service agency. Yeah.
But yeah, like, what did you learn from the whole Credo experience there? And was there anything you'd do differently or better if you did a marketplace again?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of starting off with like kind of more of a fully like managed service, like what we had there, and what EditorNinja is, to be honest with you. And most of our bigger competitors in the editing space are actually more like marketplaces. So, there's probably something for me to learn there, once we get to a certain point, probably. But it really, I mean, the challenge of marketplaces is like, it's quality control, because you're not like controlling the delivery there, right? Like you can do certain things and have guidelines and whatever, but like ultimately, like I guess you could like remove someone from the network if they don't do like good enough of work, or they're always late or something like that. But it's just kind of much bigger problems, like you're managing a bunch of people that you don't really know and don't actually work for you. Plus you're getting like smaller cuts. It's hard to take big enough of a cut. A rake is what they call it. Big enough of a rake to like actually build a sustainable business. Like it's a lot of technology, it's a lot of people management, it's low margins. So I'm not keen to get back into it anytime soon. I'll be completely honest with you.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, again, it's people. Anybody with a entrepreneurial mind will see an inefficiency in a market and be like, "Oh, that's an opportunity for a marketplace." And absolutely, it is. The problem is, I think, exactly what you said, which is very hard to grow it when you don't have one side to get the other, right? Like, there's always this, where do I start chicken and egg problem? And I agree. I think the way to do it is what you're essentially learning here as EditorNinja, which is do it as a managed service, a completely like done for you thing. And eventually, if you ever find that you've got enough people in your pool and enough demand, you could start to open it up as more of a marketplace, or you could spin off a marketplace. But maybe it doesn't even make sense to at that point, because
yeah. Well, and the thing is, like with a marketplace, you're kind of dealing with the same issues you deal with like an agency or a managed service. You're just dealing with them at scale without the controllable revenue to actually find a repeatable, like scalable service. You're dealing with the demand issue. You're dealing with the lead generation, et cetera, marketing issues. You're dealing with the retention issues. You're dealing with the hiring issues, like all of that. And so like, I mean, to even start an agency, you have to have a cheat code on one side or the other, right? Like an in. So with EditorNinja, for example, I have an in with a large network of professionally trained editors that we can just tap. And so like, I can just sell, and we know that we can deliver. I have a team that's responsible for like, make sure we have enough editors and all of that. And I can just run on like the business side, the marketing side, the sales side. It is better if you have just like a lot of demand, because kind of what we've done is like, built out the supply side, but we can only hire on people as we generate the demand. So if you can start with like crazy demand, honestly, if you can start with crazy demand, which like there are very few spaces that still exists, but if you could start with that, I would be much more likely to start a marketplace if I had like a well of demand than a well of supply. Because if you have a well of supply, people are constantly asking you, "Can I get more work? Do you have any more projects coming?" It's like, no. And the more time you spend asking me and I have to respond to you about that I don't have work is less time I can go and actually get work, you know? So you can tell, like, I've lived this. It was very frustrating. And so like, that's why I like the model we have now, because it's much more like sustainable and I can like sell people in and we have enough like, you know, lead flow. And I'm almost 10 years into being self-employed, you know? And so like I can go and generate the demand and yeah.
Yeah, there was a book I read a few years ago. I don't remember the name of it offhand, but it was a marketplace book, and
Was
basically
it The
about
Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen?
it might be. Yeah,
It's a great book. It's a great book.
Yeah, one of the things I pulled away from that was like, if you're going to do a marketplace, you got to fake the supply side till you get the demand side built up enough that you can really make it run. So, you know, like the famous example of Uber, like they fake the supply side by having like, you know, they just call cab companies for the people who use their app to plug in their location, right? It's like there was no real supply that they owned. It was just this random calling they did. Let's get into spinning up EditorNinja. And one thing you just said here, I love this, pointing this out, because a lot of people on the outside of entrepreneurship who haven't started yet, they're often asking, where's the good idea? And I think instead of just thinking about the idea, what you just said was, I had this unfair advantage. I love that, because this is the thing that comes up over and over when people start businesses that actually take off, is like the entrepreneur who started it almost always had some kind of unfair advantage, whether they were a killer salesperson, so they knew how to sell, or they had access to a talent pool that normal people don't have access to. In my case, I was a software engineer who liked to write. That's a rare skill set. Like there's just these like things that we had at the day zero that 99% of other people couldn't replicate in, overnight. And that allows us to get a little bit of an edge, which we can build margin and we can build a company off of. So you mentioned this pool of editors. How'd you get access to that? What was the process building up to that? And what other unfair advantages were you able to tap early days?
Yeah. Well, and I would add one other thing on to what you said about, like skill set and that sort of stuff. There's also lived experience. Like YC, Y Combinator, right? They will only work with people who have actually like lived the experience and have like seen the problem firsthand, like have experience in the space. So I think that's really important as well, because you know it intimately, right? If you know the customer intimately, like you're going to be able to market to them because it's you. And there are other issues that come with that as you scale, but like it's a great way to start. And I would actually say required.
What were your unfair advantages, and how did you get access to that pool of editors? Let's say, maybe even, again, thinking about it from a standpoint of other entrepreneurs want to build their unfair advantage as they get started or before they get started.
Yeah, it was kind of luck, to be honest with you. So I actually started EditorNinja. I launched EditorNinja.com mid-2020. And so I had a couple of things kind of working for me at that point. I hadn't yet gotten access to that network of editors. I helped run a book publishing company from Switzerland in 2009, 2010. And so I knew some other professional editors, people that I kind of worked with there and such, editing books and that kind of thing. And then I, I was in these like various content marketing groups and that sort of stuff. And so basically like I launched the service and then people were like, hey, like, because it's early pandemic, a lot of people lost their jobs. So I pretty quickly had about 100 people that were editors and writers that were looking for work. And so like as work came in, and it was just a little trickle there at the start in 2020. And then 2021, and so like as a project came in, I would basically sell it and then find someone that would deliver it for like, something that was profitable for me. And so just kind of started figuring out the model there. And then 2021 kind of like, went through that year, was like slinging a project every now and then. And near the end of the year, I was like really starting to burn out, kind of needed on Credo and really needed something to like reinvigorate my entrepreneurial like spirit. And I was like, I wonder what EditorNinja did this year. And I looked back and it had done $1,000 in revenue and I had maybe worked 10 hours on it. And I'm like, that's interesting. And so, I mean, like within a few weeks, I had a couple people that were like wanting to work with us ongoing. And I was like, well, I can build out the system. I basically built the same system I built for Credo initially. We had since built out like a full like custom, platform, like software workflow platform. But I was like, but I can build that same like thing to make it work for this using like the tools that I know. And so like we launched early January 2022. And by that point, so I had hired Sophia, who is now EditorNinja's head of operations. She was my executive assistant at Credo. And she graduated from that program. that has all the editors. And so like, and she was still working a little bit like part-time for like very part-time for me, but was like, would introduce me to people like, hey, I need another editor. And she would introduce me and I would hire him and whatever. She boomeranged back to me end of 2023. But I had access to that network. And then like, once you get a couple of them in, then it's like, and they have friends that do the same thing. And so like, basically we recruit our employees' friends. We get referrals from them. They've worked with them before. They've gone through the same programs, had the same training. They might work bartending jobs with them as well, but they're also a professionally trained editor. And so it's been like, we've just kind of built out the team from there.
It's great. And something I'll highlight here is the value of being a good service provider that finds people work tends to attract more people who want good work. And I think there's a side of some people starting agencies or thinking about agencies. They go, well, what value am I adding if I'm just connecting clients with a freelancer essentially? And I'm like, look, a lot of freelancers don't want to market themselves. Like they'd rather get paid a known quantity of money for a known quantity of work and have John be the guy who does the sales call and the maintenance of the relationship and the back and forth and the contracts and all that BS. And there's a lot of value in all that little stuff, even though it doesn't look like it if you're a professional editor or writer, maybe, and you only minimize your own.
Well, and the ones that are more like experienced, right? Like a good professional editor could, I know some that are making 100, 120, 130 bucks an hour, right? But what they're also doing is they're doing all of the management, they're doing all of the invoicing, they're doing all of the all the work delivery, like all those things. And that takes up a brand new freelancer like, oh, I can bill 40 hours a week. No, you're billing 20, 25 if you're lucky, right? And you lose a client, you have to go get another client. Like for us, we can plug them in, like we basically always have like more work, like for the ones that we've committed to working with. So like, yeah, if you can make $100 an hour like on your own, but like you can make the same amount of money and not have to deal with all of that stuff by working for like $60 an hour, for someone or $40 an hour for someone or something like that. Right. And like, there's obviously different values, different levels of editing and writing and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it like more experienced people kind of realize that. And so there is big value to it, right? Like you're not only bringing value to the customer in that like you can actually serve them, because finding a good agency or a freelancer can be so hard. Like there are so many out there, but it's so hard to find a good one. So people will go through like 5, 6, 8 to find a good one. What if they could get it on the first shot? That is value right there,
And not only that, like my freelancer wants to take a 1-week vacation, but we have content we want to keep going. Like what happens then, right? In a typical freelancer model, you have to work around their vacations. Maybe they get a full-time job and they leave you, like all these things. Whereas I work with EditorNinja or an agency and I know that's John's problem. Like I'm basically paying the premium so that John can figure that shit out for me.
And this is why like internally, like our backend process is like every account has like an editing project or editing subscription has a primary editor. They also have a secondary editor. Both of them are in a Slack channel with them. And then we actually have a tertiary editor who is not yet introduced to them, but like should the primary leave or something happens or they're out for a couple months for health issues or whatever, guess what? The secondary editor becomes the primary editor and the tertiary editor becomes the secondary editor. Like we have that like redundancy built in so that like the freelancer can take a vacation and the person can still get work done. And that's actually huge value. Like I've had multiple people be like, the reason why I signed with you is because I know that I can always get my work done. I'm not gonna have to like wait a week or work ahead a week because my editor is gonna be on vacation. So it can actually be a really big value add.
Huge. I want to ask you about productizing. And so what's interesting to me is EditorNinja is very heavily productized. And when I say that word, I'll, for the audience benefit, it may not be familiar. A service business in my eyes can be either heavily bespoke and custom. Every single engagement is different. It's all, quoted on an individual project basis, or heavily productized like EditorNinja, where pricing is kind of like right here. You're going to get this many words or this many, outputs for this many inputs in dollars. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both. You obviously went on the super productized side of things. What was appealing to you about that? And like, what have you found to be the big benefits there?
We're probably less productized in reality than we appear on the front end. And that's simply because like, it makes it easy for people to kind of grok what we do and what we charge with the pricing that we have, but it doesn't. And this is something that productized people that people looking to build like a productized service don't recognize, is you're not precluded from doing custom projects, right? So like we have, on our site, it looks very like we can do editing projects, we can do writing projects, we can do Spanish projects, whatever. But then we have people come in and they're like, I need 8 articles a month, but I also have another 15,000 words a month that I need edited, right? So we can combine it into like a custom, quote unquote, custom subscription, but it's just combining the services that we have offered that are kind of just bundling them together, right? You can bundle and unbundle and whatever. Productization is really about delivery, is what I've realized. And so like it makes it way easier to deliver work than like full custom, you know, because if someone came in, like if I was willing to sell people, like we don't do any strategy, for example, like we are a production shop. We don't do SEO keyword research. We don't like, you know, we're not going to jump anymore at this point. I'm not saying we won't do it in the future because like I'm working on some things, but we won't like jump into like someone else's phrase account and make sure that the SEO score is blah, blah, blah. I think SEO scores are just complete bunk and like it's a sales tool and like they don't really do anything. But like we're not doing that for people, right? Like if they need that, like I have people I can refer them to, but like we're a production shop that like we'll write it, we'll edit it, right? You give us your style guide, like that sort of stuff. And we'll like, it'll be on brand, it'll be correct, it'll be free of typos, like it'll be good. But I'm not like, you know, I'm not going to go build out a blog for them, you know, like if you don't have a blog, like I'll refer you to a WordPress development company or whatever, you know, platform development company that can build your blog and then we'll write the content for you. And so it just makes it a lot easier to say no to stuff that would just like really like gum up and just, you know, you have to go find a partner for this and a partner for that. I'm like, no, I just know people that I'll refer you to. Right. And like they do that and we do this and everybody's happy. And maybe there's a commission going around or something like that. But like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to the person that's buying it because they're just getting the work done, right? As long as it's within their budget and all that, they don't really care, is what I found. So, yeah, like productization just makes it way easier to deliver the work.
Yeah, I agree. I think 2 things you said there that struck me. One is that, yeah, it makes the work delivery process and sort of knowing how to scale it a lot easier, which is great. And then the other thing that you said that I 100% have found is like on paper, my company also looks very productized, but behind the scenes, we often end up in these like fuzzy gray areas. And that's just the reality of owning a service business is that when it really, and I'm actually pretty strict about not going outside of our zone of excellence, but at the same time, there's times when somebody wants something done a slightly different way that it makes sense to offer, especially with bigger companies or larger accounts and things like that.
Or things like we do, you know, we message payment up front. Payment's always up front. But if it's a bigger company that wants to bring us like 300 articles a month, so that's going to mean like whatever, you know, tens of thousands in monthly revenue. Yeah, man, I'll give them net 14 terms. That's no problem, you know, like not a big deal. So, you know, but you only make those exceptions for like the big ones, right? Everybody else is like, no, we get payment up front until you're at a certain point. And I'll actually tell people that when they go, hey, like, can we actually pay on like net 30? I'm like, we only do that. Like we only start negotiating like contract terms at least it's like $3,500 a month, $4,000 a month, something like that. And like before that, it's like it's our terms. Like that's that. I'm not gonna look at your contract. I'm not gonna sign your contract. You sign our contract. Have your legal team review it. And like if they're like, oh, we need this one line added in, like sure, I can add that in, right? But like I'm not gonna rethink all the things or like sign your contract, you know, because it just gums up all of my operations and it actually puts us more at risk and like all of those things. But I have the line at which yes, I will do that if they are big enough, right? If it's at least it's like a $50K a year project, yeah, I'll spend more time with you like negotiating that. But so you can draw those lines and then let people know that like, sorry, like this is where the line is. And if you want to go to that level, then if this is that important to you, then we can go to that. And I mean, I've lost one contract, I think, out of hundreds, right?
Right.
Because of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I guess we
rare.
weren't meant to work together, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And those people tend to be the ones who are just probably annoying to work with anyway, because they're worried about like redlining on a $1,000 contract, you know? It's like, that's
or a
probably not worth
$400 a month contract. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like if I spend any time looking at your red lines, like I'm never going to make my acquisition cost back. Like it's just, you literally cannot afford to sign those people. So like better just say no.
Yeah, it is interesting this, and I have the same kind of philosophy too on this is like, look, the contract that we give you, the standard rates and all that is the starting point. And until you reach a certain threshold, we're just not going to like bother with a bunch of customization. But at some point it starts to make sense and it starts to become a point where we can say, hey, you don't want to pay upfront? Great. We'll let you pay on net 30 or 60, but we're going to charge a 10% premium on it or something like that because we're basically financing the project. And if you're the right kind of client, you don't care, you do it.
Or you build in an onboarding fee, right? It was like, we build in an onboarding fee, and also I get to send the first invoice on net 30 at the start of work. And they're like, well, then we're basically paying up front. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. But if your financing needs to see it at net 30, then there we go, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. The other thing I've observed, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, is that selling a productized service is also more straightforward and repeatable than selling the custom, agency, we can kind of do anything we can scope for you thing. Have you found that to be true on the sales and marketing side?
Yeah, it's just a better it's a better service to run. It's easier for people to say yes to. And it's way easier to close just because you're not, I got to learn how to quote a custom development project. I got to find a partner that'll do it so that I maintain my margins and I can deliver and blah, blah, blah. That custom stuff is so complicated. And I'm not saying it's not worth it because there are very big agencies that have done it. But especially when you're smaller and you're the founder doing sales and all that, it's I don't want to be thinking about how much do I charge this person for this single document, right? It's no, it's up to this point, it's this amount. Up to this point, it's this amount. Contract, amount of work you need edited, it's this amount. It's simple, and simple to sell is simple to buy, and confused minds don't buy. So if you make it simple to buy, you're going to get a lot more people closing, and you're just being more transparent. They know exactly what they're getting,
Yeah. Simple to sell, simple to buy. I love that. That's a great way to put it. You're right that there's kind of this there obviously are big agencies that do custom scope work, and every single thing is a proposal and it's a multi-month process. But early on, I find that you don't want to get bogged down in those months of contract negotiations and proposal negotiations because you need cash flow, right? You and I both, we're pretty early on in this, and I don't want to wait 6 months to get my first $10,000 in revenue, right? I got bills to pay, kids to feed, and all that stuff.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. Likewise. No, it's and early on, just send them a sign up link, And even something that involved, if you're super early on, you don't have a team yet, what are you even doing? Negotiating, a contract that's going to take 6 months to close, you're going to need 10 people. You don't even have the people to deliver it, So focus on the smaller ones, and you can, gradually move up market, and you're going to end up with some combination of smaller ones and bigger ones, and, and that kind of thing over time, which is natural, and is also is a more it's a shock proof company, that if one client leaves, you don't have to lay off half the team, I try to build a resilient company is what I'm looking for. So some combination of smaller and larger and all of that. And yeah, but I'm also not going to say I'm not going to tell you to not take the whales. If you're established, you got a team and all of that, if you can get a whale, land the friggin' whale, man, figure out how to deliver it, as long as it's not about the size of it. It's about the thing that you're needing to deliver. And do you have the operations in place in order to scale up for that? Right. So if we had someone come in that they're hey, we actually had someone come in recently. They're we're going to need about 20 full-time editors for 3 months in the fall. And I'm that's 6 months out. We can do that. Are we staffed up for it now? No. But can we get there? Yes. You give me 6 months and I can hire 20 editors and vet them and put them on test projects and put them on other clients first too, just to and also have it on the editor side that I'm not hiring them full time, right? I mean, they'd be part-time, but it's temporary part-time. And and they are hired for that contract. And when that contract ends, we're not working with them anymore, right? So there are ways to do it on your side as well. That you're not bringing all this crazy overhead, which is what a lot of agencies do when it's custom, and they're we need 10 developers for who knows how long, right? And at that point, you get them into a 12, 18, 24 months, you at least have that. But then if you don't renew that contract, you're then having to lay people off. First, if you bring them on for you are for this contract specifically, and I'm expecting this contract to go this long, and it might go longer, but it also might go shorter. And if it goes shorter, I'm sorry, we just know ahead of time that we're not going to work for you, probably,
Yeah, you're speaking to something that I often advise entrepreneurs in the agency world to focus on early, which is your flexible workforce is so important early days because cash flow is such a unknown. And, before you've built a reliable pipeline and recurring revenue and all that stuff, which comes hopefully with time, your early days are how do I service these clients that I have today? And I don't know if they're going to be around in 6 months, but I got to like do the best I can with what I got. Right. And so like freelancers are great. I mean, this is one of the ways that the world being moving towards this more global and more freelance and more remote environment across the board has really been, I think, a huge empowerment for agencies, especially smaller ones that want to just get in and get started, because you can find people in South Africa, in Europe, in Latin America that have great skills and are interested in this kind of flexible remote work. Maybe they're working parents and things like that. And yet you can pay them, much less than a fixed full-time salary in the US. Even, I'm sure you guys have people in the US too, but like it just, there's just a lot of options out there.
We're actually all in the US. Everyone's in the US. I've been able to make it work. We do work with an accounting firm that my main like fractional CFO is in the US, but a lot of their support team is in Latin America, South Africa, like those areas as well. And it seems to work, very well for them. I'm not opposed to it, but but like the flexible thing is it's something that I've actually been like harping on a lot. It was like keep accounts internally, like full-time people, like that kind of thing. You're going to stretch people a little bit further than they might be stretched somewhere that has like, it just hires like full-time people for everything. But it's also a much more resilient place to work. And so like you're almost, unless you really F up and like you're really bad at your job, you're not going to get fired basically, right? Because like you are the person for this. And maybe then we layer on a second person, like that sort of thing. But it's just a much like steadier place to work. So the other thing actually that has really enabled EditorNinja to do what it's done is early on, I got advice from my mentor of mine, Chris, that I was like, how do I make sure that I have the like, especially this was like early days getting it off the ground. I was like, Chris, how do I make sure that I have the capacity to do it? Like, how do I make sure that like people are like available to do the editing that I sign on, right? Because it's like kind of sporadic. And he was like, commit to a minimum that you'll pay them every week, regardless of if they work, but make it nominal. So it's enough to keep them motivated. But not so much that like you're going to go broke, and then also have a like, we will pay you this for this number of weeks. And then if we still don't have any work after that number of weeks, we put you on the bench, and we're not like we're not guaranteeing you anything, from then on. And that's worked very well, for me. So like I encourage agencies that are doing more like fractional and that sort of thing, like consider something like that. It just makes it more flexible, and it's worked out really well, actually.
We've been talking about productization like it's a panacea, like it's the best thing in the world. There's downsides, right? Like, what do you find some of the limitations or downsides to being so productized relative to, again, the we do everything for anybody agency?
Yeah, you're going to lose some deals. You're going to have to learn to say no. Like I said no to one yesterday. They were like, we just want the full done for you, like SEO research and like all of these things and optimization and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's just not what we do. I'm sorry. But so like you're going to have to say no. You're going to have to, say no to some money, which is way easier to do once your business is really working and you've got cash in the bank than like right at the start. And if you're right at the start, don't productize. Like don't productize off the bat. Like unless you've like I did, because I had built one before and I knew how to do it. If you've never done it before, you've never built a service business before, start off with more like custom work, saying yes to more things, because you're going to learn a lot faster. And then down the road, you can productize a lot more. Like my friend Greg runs a business called Alt Agency. Greg's based here in Denver as well. Greg built custom like agencies for a long time. Then he built a productized service, and now he basically teaches agency owners how to productize, 7-figure agency owners how to productize their services. So like you can get to couple million dollars a year non-productized. Like pretty easily, and honestly maybe faster than if you've productized, but eventually the delivery and the ops is going to become so complicated it's not worth it anymore, and so then you're going to need to learn to productize, is what I've seen.
Probably it depends a bit on when you're coming into this. I mean, again, you came into this like having seen a lot of agencies and also having some ins to some early customers. Whereas I agree, like a lot of people starting agencies, they're kind of like, well, I'll do anything for anybody who'll pay me money because I don't have any customers. Like I got to say yes to something, right? And I think that is right. Like, that's how you find a market, is by saying yes to like 5 things and then saying which of these was best. Let's narrow down. Like that's what we want to do.
But that's gonna be really hard to scale. It's like a great place to start, but it's really hard to scale.
So what's hard about it to me is the discipline to look at your, like, again, you get to $1 million in revenue, let's say, and I'm looking at agencies right now to acquire and looking at a lot of $1 million to $2 million agencies. And man, so many of them, they're like so close to having niche down, but they're too afraid to just say like, this is who we work with and this is what we do. They're like, because they always want to add this caveat, but we'll also do this. And I'm like, guys, you can also do that. Like behind the scenes, right? Like again, with our productization thing, we look productized up front, but behind the scenes, there's all sorts of custom little things we're figuring out. Maybe we have a random freelancer who does some design work here and there because we got 2 clients who really want us to do it, and we want to keep them. But sort of like front facing and going forward, what we want to focus on, right, is this very narrow subset, because that's our zone of excellence where we know we can scale it. We know we can sell that. Like, anyway, so there's finer details behind the scenes.
Yeah. And you can also find that like we started off really niched. EditorNinja started off niched with just editing. We got to 22, 24, 25K a month. It was like a little bit like some bigger ones and smaller ones. So like revenue was kind of lumpy, some big one-time projects and whatever, a lot of smaller subscriptions. Productized, but like it was kind of like starting to cap out there with like the model that we were running. And then I lost a bunch of deals because we didn't write. And writing is so easy to layer on. If I already have the editors, already have like the workflow system, like we can layer on writing like pretty easily. And so we did that. And now we're like 3x what we got editing alone to. And like, but also like the writing side has grown the editing side, and the editing side grows the writing side, right? So like, and the writing side is also productized. So like, eventually you are going to need to expand if you start super niche, because like it's like even like Design Pickle, right? They're like the ultimate, like what everyone looks at for a productized service, but like they're not just doing graphics anymore. Like Facebook ads, that's where they started, but man, they've got custom graphics, they've got illustrations, like they got all this stuff now, and they're a 30, 40, $50 million a year like company, right? So like you're not going to be able to stay that simple forever, but the framework of productization, it being simple to deliver, right? I mean, simple to sell is simple to buy is simple to deliver, actually, is the way that it works. And so like, if you can focus on keeping the delivery simple, that's how you scale. Once delivery starts getting complicated, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Yep. Very good. Yeah. Really interesting stuff. I agree with you 100%. And I think this is one of the other downsides to productizing that I tell people is if you are super narrow in your niche, like the downside is you've got a limited market. And at the end of the day, you're never going to get 100% of that market, but you're going to get, some fraction, and you can only grow as fast as that market at that point. And so the question then is like, do we expand our service lines or do we go into other verticals? Like, there's no right answer. It's just a question of like, do you want to keep growing, or maybe you just want to keep it small? I mean, no shade on the entrepreneurs who want to just like do a very simple business and kind of run it forever. There's that whole, what do they call it? Company of one kind of mentality there. And I don't think that's bad either. I think it's just, you got to know what you want and be very clear about it.
Totally. No, I completely agree. And what I say to people is like I'm trying to grow this thing big. There are a lot, and then there are some people that are like, why do you want to do that? I'm like, I just do. Why does it matter? Like, why does it matter to you? And they're like, well, I don't want to get too big. I only want to go to 200K a year. I'm like, great. I hope you hit that. Because if you do that, you're happy, right? Like I've done that, and like it was good. I had a great cash cow business, right? But like that business wasn't going to get to where my ambitions want to go. And so like so I got into it. I mean, Alex Hormozy talks about opportunity vehicles. He learned that from Russell Brunson, because like he was running gyms and like incredible, like Alex had incredible like Facebook ads marketing skills. And Russell was like, you're a level 10 talent and a level 2 opportunity. As soon as Alex got into a better opportunity vehicle, like he like added a 0 to their revenue, and so like it can become about that as well. But if you just want to make 200K a year and sling some content for people, like or write some code for clients, and you hit that and you're happy, I'm so happy for you. Like that's awesome. But just recognize that there are other people that want to go bigger, and like there's no like, I'm getting passionate here. There's no problem with that. Like in my mind, I'm like, I don't judge anyone for wanting to stay at 200. I don't want to judge them for wanting to go to 200 million. There's no ethics in there for me, right? It's just like, if you want that, I hope you get that, like I just want people to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the fun and it can be challenging parts about entrepreneurship is how open-ended it is. There's no end goal, right? I mean, you literally becoming the richest person in the world. I guess if money is your only indicator, then sure, that's an end goal. But like, there's no one singular end goal. Like again, the $200,000 person who makes 200K a year, works 10 hours a week. That's a great end goal for certain people, and they want that. What I find though is that for me at least, there always ends up being another hill to climb. Every time I set a freaking goal, man, I get there and in a year, 2 years, 10 years, whatever the timeline is, and I go, well, I'm here. All right, where's the next one? It's like it never friggin' stops. And I think that's a sickness or like a strength or a weakness. I don't know yet. Do you feel that same thing though? It's like, you kind of have to go big because there's going to be more goals out there if you hit that one.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've actually changed my thinking on this a little bit just in the last couple of days. I was just at a mastermind in San Diego for the last few days, like a small private mastermind. And I realized that like, I have that like striving and like wanting to go bigger, but what I can't do is let it be like my happiness be contingent upon going bigger or not, right? Even like become the world's richest man. Who was the richest man 10 years ago? Not the guy who is now, right? And the guy who is now probably won't be for too much longer, right? Just because there are other businesses that are growing, right? Like even then, like there's no like end state there. It's not like you win the game of like being the world's richest man because like stuff changes, So like I'm actually much more focused these days on being like becoming content with what I have. And just really enjoying the game of business and building the business. And like, whether I end up at 5 million or 50 million or 500 million, like it doesn't really matter because I'm just enjoying the game. And I'm happy in who I am and in my life and, and all of that. And like, yeah, would I like to have a Lamborghini in the garage and like that sort of stuff? Yeah, because I'm a car guy, right? But it'd be fun. And like my happiness isn't contingent on that. And so I think that's an important thing for people getting into like entrepreneurship or even just like later on in it. Like we can't let this stuff like affect our happiness too much. Like we do take it personally because like businesses, they're our babies, but the more we can divorce our happiness from like the outcome, I think the happier we're going to be. And I also think the better results we're going to get.
Yep. I love that. I actually have been working on a similar mentality that I'm trying to develop, which is tying less of my personal satisfaction and happiness around hitting specific goals and more around, did I do the activities that I believed would help get me there and make progress? So, say again, I set a $2 million revenue number for one of our companies. I put myself 5 or 6 things this year I think I can do that would move that needle in the right direction. I'm going to do my happiness or my contentedness knowing that I did what I could is, did I make progress on all those things I said I was going to do? If something blocked me, fine. But like, did I do the effort that I think I could? And that's like where I try to like get myself used to. That's what I get excited about, is like doing those things. At the end of the year, I may not hit that number. I may get halfway there. I may double it. You never know, right? Like things are going to happen that are out of your control, but there are pieces of this you can control. The other thing I find hard though, and I'd be curious to get your take because you're in a similar boat. Like I have 2 young kids, so shit comes up that I really can't control. You know what I mean? Like I want to hire this person, do this, talk to this many clients, and then kid gets sick for a week and I'm out of work. And I just literally just got to stay home with him. Like, how are you getting your, how do you deal with that kind of unexpected unknown that just comes up in life?
Sometimes I deal with it better. Sometimes I deal with it worse. I mean, it's just like, yeah. And I'm very fortunate. Like my wife works from home as well. Her job is not as flexible as mine, but like, we can, my daughter's almost 6. And so like, if she's homesick, like she can watch TV, we can park her in front of the TV and she's happy. She just lays there. Just got to make sure she's fed. And sometimes she'll like come onto a call and people are like, oh, hey, I'm like this, this is my daughter and blah, blah, blah. Like it's kind of endearing. My son it's harder. He's just over 1, but I mean, honestly, man, I just try to go to the longer view that like, hey man, if I got to push off these like 4 calls from today to tomorrow, like my assistant does it, so I don't have to do it, right? I'm like, hey Bennett, I need you to like handle this for me. He's like, great, done. So like I built the systems that like I'm able to get out doing that stuff. But also like people, a couple things. One, people always understand like, hey, John needs to reschedule this because his son is homesick. They're like, oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, I can make tomorrow work, whatever. It's not a big deal. Like I've probably never lost a deal because of that. And then from there, it's just managing my own psychology and being like, look, this one afternoon or this one day, like it's not going to make or break our like, our goal. So I just put less pressure on myself. And that's just in the last couple of years, man. Like I used to put so much pressure on myself and I'm so much happier now, like not putting that on. And just being more flexible with it. Like I literally schedule in like exercise time. Like right after this, I have another call in like an hour and I put onto my calendar. I'm like, it's a 50-degree, like not a cloud in the sky day here in Denver. I have a lake right here by my house. Like, I'm going to go for a walk around the lake, and it's just scheduled in, like I'm trying to intentionally like slow down and be more intentional about what I'm doing and have a longer time horizon for success. And my business is growing faster than ever.
Yeah. I love that. That is I feel like, yeah, I'm right there with you and trying to learn these same lessons. Like this is something I'm also coming to terms with here, is this like the 10-year view or 20-year view on things. In other words, like, hey, I have to take a day off and I'm going to say it, I've been trying to flip the script. I get to take a day off to hang out with my kid, like unexpected thing that 90% of parents don't get to do without like serious repercussions at work and like comes off their sick time, right? Like I don't have all that. Like I get to freaking push stuff off and just say, it's tomorrow's problem, and like in 10 years, am I going to remember the days I got to hang out with my kids when they were sick, or the times I got to spend with them? Or am I going to remember that sales call that like, none of these calls changed my life. They're all just, day-to-day shit. Right. So good perspective reminder. We were touching on this earlier. I kind of last little bit to talk about here is like the support network you've built, or just as an entrepreneur. Cause I think this is something I've definitely learned to appreciate. It's like surrounding myself with the right people makes a huge difference on my own mental health, as well as my drive and my engagement, my happiness, all that stuff. What have you found works for you? You mentioned a mastermind group you're in. Like, what other things do you find to support yourself, John?
Yeah, I've tried a lot of things. Where I'm at now is I have, I don't know if I'd call him a performance coach, a life coach, like whatever that is. He leads the mastermind that I was just at. Went to an event of his in Ireland a couple years ago. It's just much more like personal development stuff, but also like our personal happiness and our personal, like all of that, like really affects how we show up as an entrepreneur and how we grow our business and all of that. Like if you can kind of work through a lot of personal stuff, that often unlocks the business, So that's where I'm at now. Years ago, I mean, I've been through times where I was part of like Dan Martell SaaS Academy for a few years. I had like, kind of one-on-one like executives / business coaches. Like I've had all of that. I kind of reached a point, it was like 2022, early 2023, like as I sold Credo and then was getting to go on EditorNinja, that was just like, I was like, I've learned so much and I know so much. And I found that I was relying on other people to give me permission to do things in the business instead of trusting myself. And so actually like to my right here, I have a sign hanging up that says, trust yourself. So I've intentionally pulled back the coaching that I get, especially like the ongoing, like business coaching that I get. Cause like, I know how to sell well. I know how to market well. I know how to build a team. I know how to operate. Like I know how to do this stuff. Right. So like, I just need to go do it. And I move a lot faster and I learn a lot more, faster. So that's kind of my like support, like kind of outside of here team. I do have a small like mastermind with a couple other entrepreneurs I've met with for a few years, which is good. We meet every couple of weeks, and so I still do that. But really it's come down to like, I've built a great team around me within the business. Like my head of ops, I just trust Sophia implicitly, and like, she's got my back. I've got her back. She's really good at what she does. I'm good at what I do. And so like, just that right there, and knowing that like, I don't have to do all of these things. And like, I have an assistant. I've had, multiple assistants over the years, just like, different things happening. That like, kind of handles my email and handles like, I can be like, hey, can you send this contract to this person? They get it done. Like, I mean, we had one contract that needed to be updated like this morning. And guess what? We've been on this podcast and that's probably been sent. Right. So like just building stuff like that as well, that I'm not like, oh, I got to jump from a podcast to sending an invoice, hopping on a sales call to like promoting this person or having a performance conversation or whatever. Like I've really been able to narrow down the types of things that I do, working more in my zones of excellence and zones of genius and hiring people for the other ones. That's been really big, like for my growth. Yeah.
Awesome. John, this has been great, covering everything from like marketplaces to productized services down into like mental health and keeping yourself sane. This is all my jam. I love to talk about this stuff. Last question before I let you go. What's a book you recommend or that you've read recently that's kind of made a big impact on you, business or non-business related?
Man, great question. So I've actually recently been rereading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I read it in 2008 for the first time, changed my life. And I revisit it. I at least revisit like sections and chapters a couple times a year, probably do a full reread every couple of years. So I've been kind of like re-looking at the like optimization and like delegation like sections over the last few weeks. I don't read much nonfiction, or I don't read much fiction. I read a lot of nonfiction. The book that I've like been going back to a lot recently, actually they're Alex Hormozi's books, $100 million offers, $100 million leads, especially like where we are now. Like those are kind of the things that I'm like making sure we have really tight to let us scale. And so going back and reviewing sections and all of that. And the big thing that has done for me is, I love his rule of 100 is just like doing like 100 primary actions for 100 days. And so like I've gotten very focused. I've kind of found the channels that work for us. And so I'm just like, I'm trying to stay focused and just put in the effort. Like we were last year, just like give you like a little like insight into like what we've done at the business is last year I was spending a couple $1,000s a month on Google ads. And I looked at like how many leads we got, what my percentage closes are, what the average one is worth, how long they stay with us. Like I spent like 2 months gathering all of these numbers. And I was like, holy crap, our like lifetime gross profit to acquisition cost is like 12-1. The minimum you want to go to is 3-1. And I looked at it, I'm like, I could double our spend and double the business. And so I did because I knew the numbers. And like I just did more instead of trying to do something else, right? Something new. Find a new channel because this one's kind of working. Make that one work really friggin' well and operationalize. And that can probably take you a lot bigger. So I've just been trying to like give myself the gift of focus and just doing more of the things that work, reserving some percentage of like, things to like try new of time and budget to try new things. But like 90% of our effort, if your thing is working fairly well, 90% of your effort should be going into doing more of that thing. So that's been a big like mindset shift for me, like kind of coming out of those books.
Yeah, those are good, John. I actually really like. I haven't read Alex Hormozi's books. I've listened to him on some different podcasts, and that is one thing that comes up over and over with him, which I like, is the focus and like he really harps on the like just being disciplined almost instead of the like again because a lot of people think of marketing as just trying a bunch of random shit, and then like I think it's really more of a discipline and consistency thing than it is that, and he just tends to be that mindset. So
at the start it is trying a bunch of stuff and see what works.
Sure.
Then like you got to see what is working and be willing to cut the stuff that doesn't. It's not like productization, right? Cut the stuff that doesn't work for you and double down on the stuff that does. And that's like once you get to a certain point, in revenue and whatever. For me is around, $500,000 a year in revenue, something like that. But for other people, it might be earlier. For other people, it might be later. But like the more you can focus like that, it just makes your life a lot easier. It makes your business a lot more predictable. Like it's just better. It's just better.
Yeah. All right. I'll wrap it up here. John, if anybody needs editor help or writing help, EditorNinja is the place to go for sure. Great. You'll work with a great guy over there and a great team. John, where can people follow up with you personally if they want to reach out and ask questions?
Yeah, my email is just my first name, john@editorninja.com. Reach out. And LinkedIn is where I'm hanging out these days. So come find me on LinkedIn. I'm, posting a lot of stuff and interacting with people. So come say hi.
All right. Thanks for doing this, John. I hope we do it again real soon.
I hope so too. Thanks, Karl.
Thank you for watching this episode of Retain Trust. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds and it helps others find out about the show. And if you have questions or suggestions for a future episode, leave a comment. See you next time.